Okay, here's a review for tomorrow's test. It is open notes as always. It is 6 problems. So in the first problem, what we need to do is simplify this expression. So what I do is I make my own square root right there. And then I simply divide the square root so it covers the 50. And then for the variables, I simply just write them out. So x to the power of 4 would be 4 factors of x. Even though I don't know what x is, I don't need that. Y to the 5th would be 5 factors of y. Okay, now I simplify the square root of 50. So look at this bubble. You got 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64. So 50 is not here. So I divide into the 50, and the first number I have smaller than 50 is 49. So I divide 50 by 49. I can't get a decimal. That's a decimal. Now I go to 50 divided by 36. That's a decimal. Then I go to 25. And I got that one to work and not be a decimal. So I rewrite this as 2 separate square roots. And I put 25 and 2 in that order. Okay, 25 is in the first square root and 2 is in the second. Now we replace the square root 25 because that actually equals an integer, and that equals 5. You can look either up here or here. So I put a 5 there. So then I come over here and I put a 5 outside, a factor of 5, and then a 2 inside because that's still a square root of 2. Okay, now it's a square root, so I circle 2 x's at a time. So 1, 2, and there's none left. So how many circles did I make? I made 2, so I put x to the power of 2, because that's 2 whole factors of x, and there's no x's that I didn't circle, so we won't have any x's in there. Now y, I circled 2 at a time, so 1, 2, and then this one right here I leave out. So that y that I didn't circle goes inside the square root. And then I got 2 circles, so that's 2 groups of y. So y to the second, because there's 2. Okay, and that's the answer to that problem. Now the next one's the same idea. I make my own square root, and I need to get as much of that expression outside of the square root as I possibly can. So I have the square root of 36, and then x to the 6th would be x times x times x times x times x times x. And then y to the 8th would be y times 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 y. So I look at my in my bubble, and 36 is actually here. So I don't divide into 36. I look up the answer, and the answer is 6. That goes outside the square root, so 6. I'm not going to have a whole number inside the square root. Okay, now 2 at a time. 1, 2, 3. So I got 3, so that's x to the power of 3. I don't put x inside because there were no x's that I wasn't able to circle. Now y to the 8th, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 circles, and there are none left. So I don't put anything. If I end up with nothing inside of the square root, I'm going to delete it because that means I don't have it. And this is the answer here. The square root is now gone completely. I did not need it. I didn't put anything inside. Okay, now the Pythagorean theorem. Find the unknown side of the right triangle. Okay, so it's a right triangle, and these are the side lengths I know. I know A is 4 units long, C is 12 units long, and I don't know B. My job is to fill that B in. Okay, so I kind of split this, and first I start with my Pythagorean theorem, which states that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, now A I have 4, so I put 4 to the second. Remember to put the second. B I do not know, so I keep that as B variable. Okay, and C is 12, 12 to the second. Now I get rid of as many second powers as I can. So 4 to the second, I can simplify that. 4, and then the second power key's right here. 16. So this turns into 16. Now b is a variable, so I keep that to the second, equals, then 12 to the second. Remember, it's not 12 times 2, it's 12 times 12, okay? But you can hit the power 2 key right there, and that's 144. Okay, so now I have to solve for b. So this is a b to the second equals, and then a b equals, okay? So I put a 1 in front of the b and dot it and circle it. Now that leaves me with these two numbers outside. This is where my equals is at, and those are on opposite sides. So if they're on opposite sides, I need to minus. Which one do I minus? You got to minus the correct one. You minus the one that's being added to your circle, the 16. So I minus 16, and I minus 16 from 144. 128. Now I do not need to divide here because it's just a 1, and 128 divided by 1 is still 128. So I'm just going to scratch out the 1, and I can now put 128 there. Now what number times itself is 128? Well, you don't know that until you find the square root of 128. So you go second, and then the fourth key up is your square root. You got to hit second first, and then 128. I got 11.31. You don't need the negative with it because on ABC we just do the positive. If it's X, we put the positive and the negative. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be looking for. Now my next one's the same idea. A, I don't know how long the side A is. I know B is 6 units long, and I know C is 9 units long. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A we don't know, so I keep that as A to the second. B I know is 6, 6 to the second. And then C I know is 9, so that's 9 to the second. So the A I leave alone, okay? By the way, your C is always across from your right angle. So 6 to the second, 6 to the second power, and that's 36, plus 36, equals, and then I take 9 to the second, that's 81. Now I have to solve for A, so I do this as an A to the second A problem. So I put a 1 in front of the A, dot it, and circle it, because now I can see the two numbers that go together, because my equals is here, and those two numbers are on opposite sides of the equation, so we need to minus. So minus 36. Remember, you got to minus the one that's close, that's added to your circle. And minus 36. So I need to find what 81 minus 36 is. And that's 45. Now, I would divide, but there's a 1 there. Dividing 45 by 1 is still 45, so we don't need to really do that. We can just ditch the 1. So A to the second is 45. So what number times itself is 45? Well, I don't know that. I need to find the square root. So I go second, fourth key up, 45, 6.70. Okay, and that's how long side A is. You're going to have to round it, okay, because you're going to get decimals more than likely. Okay, then number 5. A is 4, the B is 5, and I don't know the C. I don't know the side sliding down. That's the hypotenuse is what that's called. So again, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So my A is 4 squared, my B is 5 squared, and I don't know my C, so I keep that as a variable. So I get rid of as many of the second powers as I can. So 4 to the second I can get rid of. That's 16. I can find what number that actually is. 5 to the second is 25. And then we don't know the C. Now I'm going to solve for the C. Okay, I can do the c to the second equals c equals, because there's no other c's in there other than the one that's to the second power. So I put a 1 in front, dot it, and circle it. So these two go together, and again, the equals is right here. So where are those numbers at? They're on the same side. So I'm going to just add. Okay, I'm going to plus. So when I plus, I just cross it out and take 16 plus 25. That's 41. Once again, we don't need to divide because it's a 1 there. So c to the second equals 41. And then what number times itself is 41? Again, we really don't know until we find the square root. So I go second, fourth key up, 41, and that's 6.40. Okay, and that is how long side C is. Again, your C should be the longest side, like 12 is the longest, 9 is the longest, and 6.40 is the longest. Okay, now there is a word problem involving direction. It says a car travels 8 miles straight east and 10 miles straight south. Find the total distance traveled. Okay, your answer should be labeled with miles. So first I make a compass, and this is north, south, east, and west. So here's my car, and then it travels east. That would be this way. Doesn't have to be a long line. Then it travels south, okay? And then we're here. So again, I put 8 here, and then it's 10 here. So my job is to find how far it is from here to here. You don't just add them. It's not that simple, okay? So you have a right angle here, and across from that is my C, and I don't know that. A and B, it doesn't matter what you pick for what. It will be the same thing. So we'll have this be A and this be B. And now I go into my A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay. My A is 8 to the second. My B is 10 to the second. And my C I don't know, so I keep that as its variable. And then I get the C to the second equals, and then I will do the square root to get to the C. So I get rid of as many of these second powers as I can. So 8 to the second is 64. It means 8 times 8. 10 to the second. Once again, it's very important you don't take 10 times 2. 10 to the second is 100. So I add 100. Equals C to the second. Then it's 1 dot circle. Now these two go together. They're on the same side of the equals. Okay, so they're on the same. So I'm going to add. Okay, 64 plus 100 is 164. And then since it's a 1, I can just delete the 1. Any other number you would have to divide 164 by that number. So C to the second is 164. Then I find what number times itself is 164 by finding the square root. So second, fourth key up, 164. And I got 12.80. Okay. And label that miles, okay, because it's 8 miles, 12 miles, so it'd be 12.80 miles for the C. Okay, if you have any questions on that stuff, let me know.